A child doesn't poo, and so the stools become harder. Then pooing becomes more difficult and painful.
Hi everyone, and welcome to AskMeDoctor Season 3, a health video series for you and your family. I'm Mahirah from motherhood.com.my. As parents, we seem to always have something to worry about. Sometimes it's about our child's future, other times it can be if they're eating or sleeping enough. Even their bowel movements can keep us up at night. Is it too hard? Is it too soft? Too frequent? Too irregular? So many things. Today we are honored to have Dr. Ki, a pediatrician from Baby and Beyond Child Specialist Clinic and ABC Child Specialist Clinic, to bring us the scoop about poop. What's normal, what's not, and what we can do to help. Hi Dr. Ki, so nice to have you back here.
Hi Mahirah, it is my pleasure to be back.
Well, before we start, don't you think it's just so funny how before having kids, we never talk about bowel movements or poop, but after having kids, it just becomes such a normal topic?
Oh, that's really very true.
Okay, well, I have a lot of parents out there who have some interesting questions. So shall we get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so my first question for you, Dr. Ki, is what causes constipation and loose stools?
Okay, so constipation happens when your stool gets hard and dry, and this can be caused by a few things. The most common is actually diet. So this can happen when there is a transition from breast milk to formula milk. It can also happen when babies start solids for the first time, and it takes their tummies just a little while to adjust to their new diet. It can also happen when the diet is low in fiber, or the child has too much processed food, as well as not drinking enough water. The second reason could be because of lack of activity. Exercise is really important, Mahirah. So exercise helps move the digested food along the intestines. Children who don't get enough physical activity are at a higher risk of constipation.
Right, so like when you're just sitting at home or kids are watching TV the whole time, they don't really let their stomach have a chance to sort of digest the food, right?
Exactly.
So just sitting down doing nothing.
Yeah, and so the gut doesn't move very well, and that leads to constipation.
Even more reason to exercise.
So true. So the next one is something that maybe parents may not think about very frequently, and that is psychosocial issues. Now, children learn to hold their bowel movements when they are stressed, like when they don't want to go to public toilets, or there's a bit of a difficult toilet training, and even being in a different environment. I know I have some bowel movement changes when that happens. So, and the next thing is if it becomes a learned behavior. This happens when they don't or they can't go even when they feel the need to. For example, when they are too busy with an activity, or there's a new school timetable, and that changes their bowel habit routine. So as pediatricians, we also look for other possible physical problems that may cause constipation. Now, next, loose stools, on the other hand, happens when your stool is watery. This is most commonly caused by the infection in the gut, but it can also be caused by food sensitivities or intolerances, and even medications such as antibiotics. Now, again, we would also look for other possible underlying physical problems with the gastrointestinal tract that may cause diarrhea.
That's interesting, as you were mentioning psychosocial, the reason for constipation is psychosocial. So does that, for example, like when kids go to new places, like when we're going traveling and things like that, could that also be considered as psychosocial?
Yes, that can be as well, because it causes them to think that this is a new environment, and therefore it may not be a safe environment for them in their perception, and that will affect the movement of their gut as well.
That's something I did not know about. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to our next question.
Sure.
So my second question for you is, what is normal bowel movement?
That's a great question, Mahirah. So actually there is a wide range of normal and bowel movements, and it can really vary between kids, and of course according to their ages. Now, a newborn who is breastfed can poop after each feed, or even just once in 5 days, and that's absolutely normal. Bowel openings become less frequent when formula feed and solids are introduced. And in older children, some may actually go 2 to 3 times a day, while others may go on alternate days. But what is more important than the frequency is that the stools continue to be well formed and passes easily. So if you ask me what constitutes as signs of constipation, I would say a rough guide would be if the child is having fewer than 3 bowel movements a week, and if the child is passing stools that are hard and sometimes large, they are bulky. The child may show to need to strain, and it can be painful at times as well. A child may also have a feeling of tummy bloatedness. So, and the worst thing, Mahirah, is that there may even be smearing of the underwear with liquid stools.
Oh no, that's not something Mama wants to worry about.
No, and it's also very embarrassing as well, if I may add. Now, on the other hand, diarrhea means increased frequency of bowel movements compared to the usual, and stools are more loose in consistency as well. So also, the child would often have trouble controlling their bowels, Yeah.
So for parents out there who might worry whether their kids are pooping every day, they should not worry, right? Because it's normal for kids not to poop every single day, as long as the consistency of the poop is fine.
Yes, absolutely right.
All right, that's great. So we'll move on to our next question. When should I worry about my child's bowel movements?
Good question. Well, let's talk about the constipation first, yeah? So we shouldn't let constipation be a long-standing problem. This is because it can lead to a few complications. Firstly, hard stools can cause tears in the lining of the anus, resulting in passing fresh blood. Yeah, it can be quite a sight actually. And it can also cause a pile-up of stools in the rectum, and we call this fecal impaction. And it can be very difficult and very painful to evacuate.
Yeah, it sounds very uncomfortable.
Very, very. And soon, if this is not tackled, this becomes a vicious cycle. And what do I mean by that? Now, imagine with me, a child doesn't poop, and so the stools become harder. Then pooing becomes more difficult and painful. Then this will cause the child to want to refuse to poo because it's being painful. And when this happens, the bulk of stools become worse, causing bowel movements to be even more difficult. So you can see it doesn't stop, and it perpetuates the problem even more. Yeah, and if left for a long time, the rectum, which is the end part of the large intestines, becomes overstretched, and then they overstore large bulk of impacted stools. And in the long run, this causes the child to start to lose the urge to poo, making the whole situation even worse. So, when this happens, seepage of the liquid stools from further up the intestines can cause smearing of the underwear without the child even knowing. So you can imagine this can be extremely embarrassing for a child, especially if this happens when it is an older child, Now, diarrhea on the other hand is often acute, and so the main complications to look out for is dehydration, especially when the child is passing large amounts of watery stool and not taking enough fluid intake. Now, some of the signs that your child is dehydrated are, number 1, they are passing no or little urine. For younger babies, maybe you notice that there are no wet diapers in 3 or more hours. Number 2, your child may have some dry mouth and tongue. Number 3, your child is crying but without any tears. Next, if you see that the eyes are slightly sunken than usual, or your child may be inactive or irritable. Next, which is a very, very late sign really, Mahirah, is that the child is drowsy or unresponsive. We shouldn't wait until we see those signs.
Those are the latest
Very
stages.
late,
So it's always important to try and catch it as soon as possible, right?
Absolutely. So I think generally parents will take their child to see a doctor when he or she hasn't passed motion in 3 to 4 days, or complains of painful tummy or hard stools, or if it's a recurrent problem.
Right.
But what I like to highlight are the points to look out for in a case of diarrhea that will help you decide to take your child to a doctor earlier rather than later. And these are, if your child is younger than 6 months old, they can get dehydrated much quicker. Next, if your child is unable to drink enough fluids, especially when your child is also vomiting at the same time. If your child is passing 4 to 5 large amounts of loose stools in 6 to 8 hours, or if they have bloody stools, that is also a sign for us to quickly move on to see our doctor. Also, if your child is old enough, he or she may be able to tell you that he has a tummy pain, and it's a significant tummy pain. Next, if the diarrhea has persisted more than 3 days, And of course, like we said before, if your child has signs of dehydration.
Right, so these are all very important signs to look out for any parents to avoid any unnecessary health issues, right, later on?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for listing them out. So I'll move on to the next question then. So my next question for you is, how do I encourage healthy bowel movements and habits for my child?
Thank you for that question, Mahirah. So, some ways to encourage good, healthy bowel habits for your child includes having a good, healthy diet, leading an active lifestyle, and practice regular toileting. Let's look at healthy diet first. So, a healthy diet for good bowel movements is one that has adequate fiber. Ideally, have your child eat 4 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day for smoother bowel habits, although I know it can be challenging for many children. Now, just to give you a rough guide, 1 serving is equivalent to your child's 1 handful. Not your handful, your child's 1 handful.
Okay.
And so the next thing is to reduce consumption of processed foods. Also make sure that your child has enough liquids throughout the day. All right. Next, activity, Mahirah. Encourage your child to move and play throughout the day. It can be as simple as walking around the block, riding a bike, or just playing in the field or playground. And take this opportunity, moms and dads, to exercise along and spend quality time with them.
Exercise as a family, right?
Exactly.
Get healthy as a family, exercise as a family.
Yes, and children get motivated more easily when we do it along with them, rather than on the side.
Especially if we show them, I guess, that it's fun, something fun to do as a family, and it's something that they can look forward to as well, right?
Yes, I love that. So besides that, help your child to practice regular toileting. The body itself actually has a natural urge to have bowel movements after a meal. We call this the gastrocolic reflex. So take advantage of this reflex and take 5 minutes after a meal to just sit on the toilet bowl. You can encourage your child to poo if he or she feels the urge, but you don't need to pressure. That's not the goal of the exercise. Just sit, distract by having a conversation, or even read a book if you need to. Then after 5 minutes, Mahirah, poo or no poo, your child can then get off the toilet seat. Do this daily. Sometimes a reward chart may help give them a sense of purpose, to the whole exercise, and then motivate him or her to cooperate with you, to just sit there.
And at how old would you recommend parents do this for their children?
So this depends on when the child is actually ready to sit at the toilet bowl, and that usually is about 1.5 years and above.
Okay. So let's recap. So a good handful portion, your child's handful portion of fruits and veggie, adequate amount of water, exercise, and regular bowel movement training.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Okay, great. So my next question for you, doctor, is can the right nutrition help?
Oh, that goes beyond a doubt. The right nutrition is definitely key to a healthy gut, and it comes in the form of having good amounts of vegetables and fruits, as we have just talked about. So effort really needs to be put in to encourage our children to take more of them, and more often than not, we should model it as well.
Yeah. Monkey see, monkey do, right?
Absolutely. So then the next thing, Mahirah, is that probiotics and prebiotics, or symbiotics, which actually have a mixture of both pro and prebiotics, can also be helpful in maintaining a healthy gut, really. So if you're talking about real foods, actually kimchi and our very own pagaga, right, are rich in them. But the problem is they may not be very suitable for the younger kids. So in that sense, probiotics and prebiotic supplements can be good too. However, we now know that from studies that different strains actually have different functions. So do discuss with your pediatrician about it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Dr. Iki, for sharing your insights. Everything was very insightful and very informative as usual. And it's always fun talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Somehow or other, you made the topic of bowel movements not so icky. And so before we end this, do you have any advice that you want to give to our parents and viewers out there?
Yeah, so Mama Dadas, Constipation is actually a very common problem, and I think if I want to leave one thing with you is that don't let it be a long-term problem before you do something about it. Rewind this video and just go through the points that we have just spoken about and discussed about. And of course, with diarrhea, normally it's because of an infection, so do know how to recognize the signs of dehydration and before it even sets in, to see your pediatrician.
Great. Well, thank you once again, Dr. Yiki.
Thank you.
And to all the viewers, stand a chance to win an Ask Me Doctor Wellness gift box with RM100 with these simple steps. Step number 1, share this video. Step number 2, name one way to encourage healthy bowel habits for our children. Step number 3, tag 3 friends in the comment section, and don't forget to ensure that your account is in public mode. And a special thanks to our sponsor BioLife for sponsoring this episode of Ask Me Doctor. As parents, we always want to ensure our children grow healthily. BioLife AB Junior Pre and Pro contains symbiotics to help boost gut health, improve bowel movements, and increase nutrient absorption for the growing child. Well, we hope that you enjoyed and learned from today's program. Stay tuned for our next episode as we will have Dr. Hugh Kaufman from Columbia Asia Cheras for the topic of screen time and growing children. What are the rules? Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Till next time, I'm Mahirah Khan.
I'm Dr. Yiki.
This is motherhood.com.my. Bye!